So, we've all gotten pretty used to AI that can chat with us, write an essay, or even create some wild art. But what if all of that was just the warm up act? The next real leap for AI, it isn't about getting better at talking to us. It's about starting to do things for us. Just imagine this for a second. You ask an AI to plan a trip for you, but instead of just spitting out a list of flights and hotels, it actually finds the best option, books it, puts it on your calendar, and even arranges for a car to pick you up from the airport. That's the jump we're talking about. Welcome to the world of agentic AI.
So, what's the official definition? Well, the Information Technology Industry Council puts it like this. The key phrases you really want to lock onto here are multi-step planning, reasoning, and the big one, the power to autonomously select tools. See, this isn't an AI just following a simple script. It's an AI that can actually think, strategize, and act on its own to get a job done.
To really get our heads around this huge shift, here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll look at that leap from just answering questions to actually acting. Then, we'll pop the hood and see how these agents work. We'll check out some examples in the wild, and then, and this is important, we'll tackle the risks that come with this kind of autonomy and talk about the guardrails we need to build. All right, let's dive into our first section, this massive leap from answering to acting. This is a fundamental change, right? We're moving from a passive AI that just gives you information to an active AI that actually gets things done in the world. This slide breaks down the difference perfectly. A chatbot, the kind we know today, just responds. It waits for your next command. An agent, though, pursues a goal. You give it an objective, like, get me to the conference in Berlin next week, and it creates and carries out the entire plan. It's really the difference between being handed a recipe versus hiring a personal chef. You know, the World Economic Forum has a great way of putting this. They say you're not just using a tool anymore, you're basically onboarding a new digital team member. This is a collaborator, a digital colleague that can handle whole projects, which frees up the human team to focus on the big picture strategy and creative stuff. So, how do these digital colleagues actually function? What's going on inside the machine? Let's take a look at the anatomy of an agent. It really boils down to three main parts. First up, you've got the brain. That's the large language model, the LLM, giving it all that reasoning power. Second, there's the blueprint. Think of this as the agent's operating system. It's the architecture that lets it plan, remember things, and stay focused on a goal. And finally, you have the toolbox. These are its hands, its connections to the real world. Things like APIs that let the agent actually do stuff, like book that flight or send an email. And what's really important to get is that it takes a village to build one of these agents. It's not just one company or one person. You've got this whole value chain, from the teams gathering the data and building the core AI model, to the developers who create the tools it can use, all the way to the folks who actually integrate and deploy the final system into a real-world setting. Okay, enough with the theory. Let's talk about where we're actually seeing these agents in action today, and more importantly, where this is all headed. This visual really shows you the whole spectrum. On one end, you have agents you might even have at home, like a robot vacuum. It's highly specialized, does one job, and operates in a pretty simple environment. But on the other end of the spectrum, you have the future. Things like fully autonomous vehicles making incredibly complex, high-stakes decisions in a chaotic, unpredictable world. And the impact is already hitting major industries. In cybersecurity, agents are becoming the first line of defense, sorting through thousands of threats so humans can focus on the really critical ones. In manufacturing, they're running entire production lines, sometimes boosting productivity by up to 50%. From finance to HR, these agents are taking over complex, tedious work and just totally changing how businesses operate. Okay, but with all this incredible new power, you knew this was coming. We have to talk about the risks. What happens when we actually give AI the keys and let it start making decisions on its own? First, we gotta get one thing straight. The difference between automation and autonomy. They sound similar, but they're worlds apart. Automation is about execution. Think of a factory robot arm doing the exact same weld over and over again. Autonomy is about decision-making. It's about the agent figuring out the best way to achieve a goal. And that flexibility, that's its superpower, but it's also where the real risks start to creep in. The ITI report highlights a really serious risk they call jagged failure. Here's the idea. Because these agents perform tasks with multiple steps, one tiny error at the beginning of the process can cascade. It can snowball through the entire workflow, getting bigger and bigger with each step and leading to a massively flawed outcome. It's literally a chain reaction of mistakes.
And the risks don't stop there. Security is a huge one. A cleverly worded prompt could trick an agent into doing something harmful. Privacy is another minefield when an agent has access to all your personal and company data. Then there's the human side of things, the danger of us trusting these systems too much, and that really tricky question of, well, who's to blame when something inevitably goes wrong? So the challenge is pretty clear. How do we unlock all this amazing potential without unleashing all the risks? Well, the answer comes down to building the right guardrails from the very beginning. The World Economic Forum proposes a really smart, structured approach that's built on 4 pillars. First is classification, just figuring out what an agent does and where it's working. Then comes evaluation and risk assessment, which is all about rigorously testing it to see what could go wrong. And finally, governance, where you put safeguards in place that are a perfect match for those specific risks you identified. And what's super important here is that this framework says every single agent, no matter how simple, needs some baseline rules. This means strict access controls, only giving it the keys to what it absolutely needs. It means testing it like crazy in safe sandbox environments before you let it loose. And critically, it means keeping detailed logs of everything it does, and always making sure a human can step in and pull the plug if they need to. At the end of the day, this is the tightrope we're all walking. We are in an age of ridiculously fast innovation. But for this technology to actually work for us, to be adopted and trusted, it has to be built on a rock-solid foundation of safety and clear accountability. Look, there is no doubt about it. Agentic AI is on its way, and it's ready to become a part of our daily lives, both at work and at home. So the real question isn't if it's coming anymore, it's how we're going to manage it. Are we, as individuals, as companies, as a society, actually ready for our new digital colleagues?